Good morning, sir. So today we will discuss all about photosynthesis. In order to plants grow, they need inputs of carbon dioxide, water, and energy. The chemical process by which plants use these resources to manufacture glucose, the building blocks of the plants, is called photosynthesis. In the process, oxygen gas is produced as the byproduct. The energy for photosynthesis originates in sun and arrives at the earth as sunlight. This light has both a wave and a particle nature. A particle nature or photons are the smallest units of light. Photons oscillate along the path which measure as wavelength. The light emitted from the sun contains photon in a wide spectrum of wavelength, called the electromagnetic spectrum. Photosynthetic organisms use only a small portion of electromagnetic spectrum called visible light. Photosynthetic organisms contain pigment that facilitate the capturing of wavelength of light in a visible light range. The color of the pigment comes from the wavelength of light reflected. Plants appear green because they reflect yellow and green wavelength of light, while the red and blue wavelength of light are absorbed by this pigment and provides energy that is used in photosynthesis. Within eukaryotic photosynthetic organism, also known as photoautotrophs, the chemical reaction of photosynthesis occur within the plant cells in a specialized structure known as chloroplasts. Photosynthesis consists of two sets of reaction. The light-dependent reaction to be discussed by Mr. John Leonard Salvador and Calvin cycle which later to be discussed by Miss Maureen Garay. Within the chloroplast are small disc-like structure called thylakoids, which are surrounded by a fluid-filled space called the stroma. The reaction that synthesis glucose, Calvin cycle, occur in the stroma. Always remember that photosynthesis takes place in the plant cells with chloroplast, and the chloroplast contains the green pigment called chlorophyll, and that chlorophyll absorbs the energy from the sunlight that allows carbon dioxide and water to process. The glucose is the useful product for plants. Some glucose is used straight away by plant cells, some is converted to starch for storage and later used for food. Oxygen is the byproduct. This gas is transported out of the leaf into the air, and this gas is the foundation of life for us human and animals. And now, let us John Leonard to explain further the light-dependent reactions.
Thank you, Mr. Pasiliao, and good day, everyone. Now, the next topic that I will discuss is about light-dependent reaction of photosynthesis. And I really wish I could have a special ability of plants like photosynthesis because plants have adaptation to carry out photosynthesis in a variety of environments. One thing plants have to do is capture light. Plant can use capturing molecules called pigments. So, a pigments that plants commonly use to capture light is chlorophyll, And then the chlorophyll does a great job at absorbing red and blue light, but not so much green light. And there are two major processes that occurs in a chloroplast that together make up photosynthesis. They are the light-dependent reaction and light-independent reaction. But I will focus in light-dependent reactions. This reaction is a photochemical reaction taking place in a thylakoid membranes of a chloroplast, where light energy is transformed into adenosine triphosphate or ATP and nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate or NADPH. And the next is how light-dependent reaction work. Light-dependent reaction happen in the thylakoids. Overall function of light-dependent reactions is to convert solar energy into chemical energy in the form of NADPH and ATP. This chemical energy supports two light-independent reactions and fuels the assembly of sugar molecules. The light-dependent reactions, the protein complexes and pigment molecules, work together to produce NADPH and ATP. And the next one is how can light be used to make a food? When a person turns on the lamp, electrical energy becomes light energy. Like all other forms of kinetic energy, light can travel, change form, and be harnessed to do work. In the case of photosynthesis, light energy is converted into chemical energy, which photoautotrophs use to build carbohydrates molecules. However, autotrophs only use a few specific components of sunlight. And also, photoautotrophs can capture light energy from the sun, converting it into a chemical energy used to build a food molecule. In the light-dependent reactions, light is captured and water, which reactant in the photosynthesis equation is split. That means if you think the chemical formula for water, which is H2O, it is also split so that you can get electrons and protons and oxygen. So that the oxygen is also a product of light-dependent reactions. It is also produced ATP and ADPH, which will get into a little bit. And the next one is how ATP and NADPH are formed. Since the light-dependent reaction uses two photosystem called photosystem 1 and photosystem 2, which are both embedded in thylakoid membrane. It is also beginning the photosystem 1, which receives the light energy. This light energy is transferred into chlorophyll reaction center, causing electrons to be energized. So all, thank you, and may I call on Maureen Garay to present her slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salvador. This time, let's talk about what is Calvin cycle. Calvin cycle is also known as the C3 cycle. It is the cycle of chemical reactions where the carbon from carbon cycle is fixed into sugars. It occurs in the chloroplast of the plant cell. Calvin cycle is indirectly dependent on light, since the necessary energy carriers adenosine triphosphate or ATP and nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate or NADPH are products of light-dependent reactions. The primary function of the Calvin cycle is to make organic products that plants need using the products that the light reaction of photosynthesis. Next, let's talk about the three basic stages of Calvin cycle, and these are carbon fixation, reduction phase, and generation phase. The first stage is known as the carbon fixation. It is the process by which plant fix atmospheric carbon dioxide or inorganic carbon to produce organic compounds. It is the light-independent process or dark reaction of photosynthesis. The second stage is the reduction phase, whereas the organic molecule is reduced. The three phosphoglyceric acid or 3PJ molecules created through carbon fixation and converted into molecules of simple sugar, glucose. This stage obtains energy from adenosine triphosphate and nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate formed during the light-dependent reactions of photosynthesis. The third stage is generation phase. It is a complex process that requires adenosine triphosphate. In this stage, some of the glyceraldehyde or dehyde triphosphate or the G3P molecules are used to produce glucose, while others are recycled to generate the ribulose biphosphate acceptor. So now that we've learned the three stages of Calvin cycle and their mechanism, what about the products that comes from this cycle? The reactions of Calvin cycle add carbon from carbon dioxide in the atmosphere to a simple 5-carbon molecule called ribulose biphosphate. These reactions use chemical energy from nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate and adenosine triphosphate that were produced in the light reactions. The final product of the Calvin cycle is glucose. And that's all. Thank you.